Hello, my name is Travis Meyer. I am a Lutheran pastor and biblical scholar. This is the first video in a series that is an attempt to recapture the class I am teaching on the Bible and trauma here in this fall of 2025. This is the introductory piece to introduce the class and to go over a few of the resources that I will be consulting throughout this series. More will be added, but these are four of the foundational pieces that I have used to develop this class and that have gone into my thinking and processing on how to approach the Bible on one hand and trauma on the other. So let's start with a basic question. What is trauma? For that, I'm going to turn to one of the resources, The Politics of Trauma, Somatics, Healing, and Social Justice by Stacy Haynes. And the way she defines trauma is this. Trauma is an experience, series of experiences, and or impacts from social conditions that break or betray our inherent need for safety, belonging, and dignity. So I appreciate this definition, which is one of many, and depending on the author and their interpretations, whether they are more in the neuroscience world or whether they are more in the somatics world, the focus of how trauma impacts tends to be a little bit different. Stacy's approach is one from a social justice lens, and for me, reading about trauma and placing it in conversation with the Bible, this is the best definition, I believe, because a lot of the historical pieces that we've got in Scripture that I'm going to be talking about over the course of this class have to do with the disruption of safety, belonging, and dignity because of the social conditions that the original authors, audiences, and ancestors of the Hebrew Scriptures experienced. They lost safety, they lost dignity, and they lost belonging. So I'm going to use that as a wonderful foundational piece for this class. So why the Bible? The Bible is a hotly debated, interpreted, has been for 2,000 years, probably longer, about the story of who we are, who God is, and how we get through this messy world. I always go back to my systematics professor, Vitor Vestele, who passed into the great cloud of witnesses a few years ago. But his take was that the Bible is trying to answer three simple questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? When did fear arrive? Who are we? Where did we come from? When did fear arrive? Those three basic things are the struggle that all humans have always had, in the vastness of not only our own planet, but also in what we can see that we know is much larger than us. Who are we? How long have we been here? And why are things so messy? The experience of the ancient covenantal people of Israel is one that is vastly different from some of the great empires, the Egypts, the Romes, the Babylons, of the ancient era, in that the covenantal people of Israel never had sustained power. That is a part of their history which makes one question why that story survived. For that, a piece of historical study, Why the Bible Began by Jacob Wright, an alternative history of the Scripture and its origins, professor at Candler down in Atlanta, a wonderful survey of the best that we know, and this is archaeologists, this is biblical scholars. He consolidates these resources. How do we know how long some of these stories have been here? What do we hypothesize is the origin of some of these stories? How did it all come together? In my own study of the Old Testament, what has become clear for me is that most of what we've got in the Hebrew Scriptures is redacted after the Babylonian exile, and that is about 500, give or take, years before Jesus. So this is the period of Second Temple Judaism. All of those old stories are redacted. And so the authors of the books we call Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, on down the line, the authors don't have the last word. It's the redactors and the scribal editors generations later that shape these stories into a reflection of this is where we have come from. The experience of the Old Testament is one of trying to ask, who are we in the midst of all of this oppression? How can we still have a relationship with God if we've constantly been conquered? And what does all this mean? Is it our failings? Is it our breaking of covenant? And that's the exploration of this particular book, is asking the question, why? And this is what Wright has to say about it. But our larger concern is why it all began, and why it began in places that were off the beaten path rather than at centers of ancient civilization. Our answer to that question will involve two primary factors: political division and military defeat. Without the relationship between a pair of closely related kingdoms, Israel and Judah, northern and southern, and without their devastating destruction and downfall, we would not have the Bible. In the first parts, we will explore where these two kingdoms emerged, whether they were ever united, what they achieved, and how they perished. So the start for him is why this story has survived, because it doesn't come from one of the great powerhouses of the ancient world whose stories were lost and had to be rediscovered, either buried in the sands of ancient Mesopotamia or unable to be unlocked because of translation impossibilities at times along the Nile Delta in Egypt. Why does this story of a covenantal people that never had consolidated power, how does it survive in the midst of other stories that seem like they should have lasted much longer? So we're going to talk to Wright throughout to get through the history. A wonderful book by David Carr, Holy Resilience, The Bible's Traumatic Origins, is a really great introduction to exploring the intersection of trauma and Scripture. He doesn't just do the Old Testament, he does, what we Christians would call the Bible. And I'm assuming he's working with the 66 books. I'd have to go back and check that of, the canon of Scripture as most people would follow it. His piece is this: the Bibles, both of Judaism and of Christianity, are a written deposit of centuries of survival, of suffering, communal resilience. Where the myths of other nations focused on triumph and died with them, the Bible speaks of survival of total catastrophe. Our scriptures pictured gods who sponsored empires in their domination of others. The Jewish and Christian scriptures envision a God who brought suffering on God's own people and yet carried them through it. The contemporary cultural scene seems to favor politicians and religious leaders who affirm their constituents and their lives without much question. The scriptures of Judaism and Christianity offer pictures of a God who is still present when life shatters to pieces. Life can shatter us to pieces. That, I suggest, is a big reason why we still have the Jewish and Christian Bibles with us now. So he's got a wonderful reflection that I think matches really well with the piece that Jacob Wright does with the history of the Bible and why. And so these two will be biblical, historical companions, foundational pieces for this study. Now we get into the more academic neurological side. And so a foundational piece for that will be Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. I'm going to have a couple of videos from him that are on YouTube that he's put out. This book contains multitudes of knowledge and approach in his own experience, starting in the post-Vietnam era. His entrance into the study and healing of trauma comes working with folks his own age who had come back from the war in Indochina, and he called them hollow. They were the same age, but they didn't have any kind of the same connections. And that was his start back in the 70s. So we'll talk to Bessel a lot. And then, of course, I've already referenced Stacey Haynes's The Politics of Trauma. So she has to say this about what the causes of trauma are and why I think her work intersects with this study of Scripture is because of the social issues that she brings into the conversation. So here's what she has to say in the introduction. This book also asks the question of what causes trauma, what experiences, family and community dynamics, and social and economic conditions caused most traumas. It looks to social justice as the primary prevention of trauma, while also acknowledging how essential healing from trauma and oppression is to that goal, to decrease suffering and to increase safety, belonging, and dignity. If we do not understand and integrate the shaping power of institutions, social norms, economic systems, oppression, and privilege, alongside the profound influences of family and community, we will not fully understand trauma or how to heal from it. We will not understand how to prevent it. And again, the loss of safety, the loss of dignity, the loss of belonging, that first quote that I read from her, I think is integral to our look at the folks that remembered and recorded and brought to us what we call the Bible, Old and New Testaments. So, brief introduction. These are the 4 resources that are the foundation. I will be bringing other companions along in the study and we'll introduce them. So these will be my reflections. I'm teaching this class right now on Sunday mornings as a part of my adult Sunday school class, posting these on YouTube and other social sites, and going to see how it develops. The way I teach is in a conversation, and so questions that arise in class affect how I proceed. And so we may loop back to topics, we may push a little faster than I intended into certain areas. It really is driven by participation of folks because this is a conversation about the experiences that we bring. I'm bringing a particular experience of my own healing, my own experience of trauma, my study of Scripture, and that informs what I bring to the group and then the way the group interacts with it, the stuff they bring into the room. All of that becomes a part of the collective experience, and we're going to get the reflections of that in these videos. So please join me. If you like this content, please like it, share it. If you do have comments, I'm going to leave the comment section open on YouTube, where I think this is going to originate, and then go out to TikTok, Facebook, all that other stuff. So I do appreciate the interaction because it helps to shape the ongoing conversation, and questions help me to learn more as well. So thanks for checking this out. Again, please like, share, and welcome to this study of the Bible and trauma. Thank you.